What was that? That was one crazy race. I don't know what was going on there. Rain, black flags, red flags, crashes, safety cars, virtual safety cars. Crazy. All right, you ready to go, son?
I'm ready to go.
Hello. Welcome to Hard Compound, an American take on Formula One. We just finished watching Brazilian Grand Prix, Sao Paulo, Interlagos, race 21 of this long 24 race season. One that's constantly surprising us. And that was a race, son. Max in P17 weaves his way up. I don't know. That was not just a race, that was a win for the ages. That was so complete that I wonder, is Lando ever going to recover? I mean, with all the questions Max hadn't won in weeks, McLaren clearly with the best car the past several months, and then Max just does that. That's a dagger. And then Alpine. I mean, brothers in arms. Ocon, Gasly, tumultuous relationship all these years, but all those years together, racing, karting, that was good to see. And now, finally, on the podium together. First time, I think. All right, son, give me your thoughts, your feelings about the Brazilian Grand Prix.
Yeah, Brazil. What a crazy race, crazy weekend. Came into it knowing Max was already handed a grid place penalty. Assumed that McLaren and Lando would make up even more ground. Assumed again after qualifying, which only happened a few hours before the race, that McLaren and Lando would make up more ground on Max. And then chaos ensues, but really chaos didn't matter too much to Max. He was going to win that race anyways, and he just beat the living shit out of Lando. I mean, Lando might as well just quit racing after this, You are not going to beat Max, simply put.
I mean, even last race, I thought, Lando's he's still a chance. And man, that was just false. That was just completely false. I was 100% wrong after seeing what Max did in Brazil against Lando. And it isn't even just Brazil. I mean, Brazil was the knife. Brazil is what killed Lando. But, they had this North America triple header, U.S., Texas, Mexico, Brazil. Lando had a better car, I say. And over the three races, Lando scored 52 points, Max 62. I mean, there was no better time for Lando to make up ground, and he did not.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, Ferrari won 2 races and Red Bull won 1 of those 3, right? And given McLaren's lead in the Constructor Championship and their dominance over the last few months, you would expect Lando and Oscar to have gained a lot of ground on not only Max, but the Ferrari pair as well. And it just didn't happen. I think in particular, this race sort of proved how valuable the drivers can be in F1. Obviously, great cars, great teams make a big difference and can push you over the top. But you got to have really good drivers as well. And guys who are consistent, who are fast, who have the right mentality, all these things are very important. And Max is just the best. I'm sorry to people who hate Max. It's tough. Sometimes you hate guys who are the best, and that's valid, but you can't say anything otherwise because he's just too good.
He surpassed Schumacher for most consecutive days leading the World Driver Championship. Schumacher had it at 896, Max in 897 and counting. Likely he will win this year. He won't be in second. So that goes into next year, 100 days plus, just extending that. And I mean, what we've seen is, last year people could say, oh, that's just a dominant car. It's like the Mercedes of 2018, let's say. But man, I've said it before. Max is the Michael Jordan of F1. He's simply too good combined with too competitive. And that's it. You will just have to fight over second. And that's what everyone's going to have to do, I think. And I have to say, I just love the cold-bloodedness, not only of the race, but then afterwards, because the British media had been hounding him for a variety of reasons. But number one, in Max's view, was because he's not British. And he's like, hey, what do y'all got to say? Where are you? You heading for the airport? You need to get out of here? You know, I was like, dude, it's cold-blooded. That's like Michael Jordan. There was no slight that's ever slight enough. It all goes in.
Yeah, I mean, look, at some point, you can say what you want and badmouth and whatever, but sometimes that'll come back to bite you a little bit. And in this case, Max won the day, and he took full advantage of that, which is well within his right to do. You know, you're a winner. Ain't nobody can say anything about you then.
Yeah. I mean, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, potentially in a few years, Oscar Piastri, these guys will be considered, greats. Maybe George Russell among the F1 greats. Hard to say. But it's like, look, they never won. And it's like, that'll always be a mark. It's like, once Michael Jordan won his championship, that was it. Until he quit playing basketball, that was it. And I have a feeling it's going to be the same. As long as Red Bull delivers a car that's within striking distance, that's it. Now, on a completely opposite end of the spectrum, Alpine. Talk about a crazy race. Alpine got more points in Brazil. Not only that they had all year, they got more points than any other team. Nobody saw that one coming.
No, that was ridiculous. I mean, they exceeded all expectations this weekend and put themselves in a place to, at season's end, if they remain in that position in the Constructors' Championship, I think 6th at this point. You know, it isn't maybe where they want it to be, but it doesn't look so bad. Whereas 24 hours ago, it looked bad. It was not good. They were an embarrassment to French people everywhere. So
they were, and as bad as they were, that was compounded by the fact that they were like, yeah, we're no longer going to be a constructor once new regulations take place in 2026, which is just, Alpine, that's Renault, that's just shocking and sad. There was rumors of maybe Cadillac, GM, somebody else buying them out, maybe taking over the team. Could be a fire sale. All of a sudden, bam, 2 guys on the podium, both French, for the French team. That was great to see. And because prize money and how it's distributed in F1 has long been a secret. They make it as non-transparent as possible. It's like, how much did you earn for this race? How much did you earn for finishing 3rd? How much did you earn for finishing in 9th? You'll never know. They don't tell you. But Crofty said, and Krohn backed him up. So I think they've got, some inside knowledge. The getting into 6th place was $50 million more than being in 7th place. And I was like, that's a big payday if that's what they get.
Yeah, that's outrageous. Tens of millions of dollars, is the difference from whatever position they were before, 9th.
Yeah, but so now they're in 6th currently.
6th.
We don't know.
But they moved up 3 positions, right? So,
right. But imagine how much Haas could really use that money too. Imagine that. So they were going to fight. That's going to be a good fight.
Only a few points back, I think.
Yeah, I think it's like 3 or something. Like that's going to be good.
Yeah,
that's $50 million. So, but it clues you in of just how much money there is as you go up places in the standings.
Yeah, it's important, I think. Right. And we can get into it or have gotten into it before, but you need 2 good drivers, and some teams only have 1 good driver. And there's reasons that teams have dropped guys in the middle of the season or whatever. It sometimes is necessary because it matters in millions of dollars. So,
well, on that point, so let's look. They're currently, thanks to the double podium, Alpine is currently in 6th. 5th would be Aston. Aston is in a comfortable 5th, thanks to Alonso and thanks to the car at the earliest part of the season and the bottom 5 being so woeful. But they're not going into 4th. they should be comfortable enough to where they likely won't fall into sixth. But man, that team is regressing. The car doesn't look good. Alonso sort of certified his legend status as an F1 driver, by just getting to the finish. Stroll was spinning out,
in a formation lap.
In the formation lap. Speaking of like one driver can cost teams millions. Yeah. And then, of course, speaking of one driver costing teams millions, and there's Sergio Perez. Much of last year and into this year, I made excuses for Sergio, but it's clear his time has come. He's not even keeping up with Liam Lawson, who's jumped into the V-carpet Racing Bull. I think Liam's outscored him in the 3 races. And there's not really much you can say about Sergio, is there?
I don't think so. I think his time is nigh. I think he's got a couple more races left, and then he's getting the boot. For whatever reason, more ceremoniously than Daniel Ricciardo, who everybody actually liked. So I don't really understand what the holdup is. Maybe it's just we don't want to have to find a replacement right now. We want to take our time to announce that driver, right? But it's insane to me that he has been there for as long as he has. We said the same thing about Valtteri Bottas at the Mercedes when Hamilton was just killing everybody. But at the very least, Mercedes was winning the constructor. So they said, that's good enough. Well, now we look at it and Red Bull's not winning the constructor. So.
Right. And Red Bull is unique. It's one of the teams where they can. So I think, obviously, it's F1. It's the driver that we identify with mostly. I think most fans do. And so the driver championship is most important. But the constructor championship is also very important. And Red Bull is one of those teams that can legitimately say, it's not such a big deal if we don't win the constructor. A Mercedes definitely wants to win the constructors. But now in this new era of spending cap, where you finish really is going to matter, and how much money your team has and how much they can spend, that's a much bigger deal. So yes, Sergio is definitely costing them. And speaking of Mercedes, man, I don't know what's going on there. Lewis seems ready to check out. The team as a whole seems to be making some, not major, but minor, uncharacteristic mistakes. We've heard for 2 years now, the cars, we think we figured it out. We think we understand the setup. We think we know the aerodynamic issues. But week to week, it's not competitive.
Yeah, Mercedes is a really interesting case study. I mean, just their inability to solve the issues that they have is quite surprising, given just how clearly dominant they were a few years ago. They were a well-oiled machine. Nobody could touch them. Hamilton was having fun and enjoying driving. And now he wants seemingly nothing to do with that team. Clearly doesn't want to be there. Doesn't seem to care about these races currently. And Mercedes is so far off the pace from any of the top 3 teams. I don't know if I'm even considering Red Bull a top team. It's pretty much just Max at this point is holding them up. But Mercedes is so far off the pace, and Hamilton, like you said, he seems like he's checked out. He's only 2 points behind George Russell right now. I mean, what the hell has Russell been doing? They're a dysfunctional team, and hopefully when Kimi Antonelli, hopefully fun young rookie, comes in next year, he doesn't come into something just chaotic and dysfunctional, because I think that would be really disappointing to have another promising young driver come into a team that just is not functioning properly.
Right. And he'll never meet his expectations, his abilities, probably gets sent off to Indy. We've seen this before. So yeah, that would not be good. Why don't you give me your top 5 for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, Patrick?
Okay, so I just have Max. I mean, he's a clear driver of the day, of the weekend. I mean, look, you can't say much bad about how he drove this weekend in the rain, in crazy conditions. He was the only guy who could actually pass anybody. Nobody else was able to. So already there's points for him. Good job. He also stayed on the track the whole race. So, good for him there. And he made up 16 positions and finished on the top step of the podium. So, pretty unreal drive. Just overall, he's just impressive. And he kind of needed that and cemented his position at the top of the standings this season. He will be the winner this season. I mean, yeah, just crazy. And to do it in a car that's not going to win the constructors is for the second time in a few years. I don't know if anybody's ever done that. I know that people have done it at least once, but
maybe Nelson Piquet. I'm not sure. I think you're right. Yeah, he'll have won. He almost certainly wins it this year. That's 4 and at least 2. Well, definitely 2 where he didn't have the car that won the constructors in the top car. And you think, look, let's say Ferrari. I mean, McLaren's been great. Ferrari's getting better. But Lewis comes there next year. Let's say Lewis isn't I don't want to say toxic presence, but let's say, that's a big change. Lewis Hamilton coming in there, Carlos Sainz going away. But let's say it's all good. So now we've got a very competitive team, but 2 drivers that can win. Then we go McLaren, very competitive next year. 2 drivers that can win, Lando and Oscar. Red Bull, we don't know. So even if they're the third car again, Max can sort of split the difference there. While Lando and Oscar are fighting, and they're both equals. I think it's clear now. McLaren cannot choose one over the other. Ferrari dare not choose Charles over Lewis. I don't think Lewis would even put up with that. So Max is, he's already in a good position, even if Red Bull have, let's say, the third best car next year. But you look at the standings now. Max has 393, Lando 331, so he's 62 behind. There are 3 races left and a sprint.
It's 20 points a race is outrageous.
Yeah, so
It's not
I
possible.
haven't done the math, but I think if Max wins Las Vegas, he seals it. I'm not sure. 25, 62, 69. I think he might.
Well, he would, right? I mean, that's 33 points per race. I don't think that's enough up for grabs, right? Because that's 25, 50 plus 8, 58 points. So he basically 2 races, 58 total points.
Yeah, no, there's 3 races left, plus a sprint.
Right, so after Vegas, I'm saying.
Yeah. So
if he's ahead by 58 points or more, then he wins.
Yeah, I think he can, right. And I think he can win. I mean, we've seen him do it in Vegas before, and Leclerc at 307. So he is 21, 24 behind Lando with 3 races and a sprint. I think the current order is how it's going to play out. Max 393, Lando at second, currently 331, Charles currently at 307. I assume that's how the Drivers' Championship will end. 1, 2, 3, Max, Lando, Charles. Although I think Charles can still put up a fight.
Well, he was real good in Vegas last year. So, I think if he closes the gap a little bit in Vegas, he's going to be gunning for Lando and has a real opportunity to leapfrog him by the end of the season, which frankly seems to me like it would be a little bit embarrassing for Lando. But I don't know.
I think Charles has proven himself the second best driver. So we'll see. But I do think Lando should be able to hold on to that. And if he does not, and it's not a clear fault of the team or car, then that would be a bit of an embarrassment. Now in the constructor standings, McLaren, though, clearly ahead, 593 to Ferrari's 557. Red Bull just behind at 544. So that's still wide open amongst the 3, although I think it's going to come down to McLaren, Ferrari. And with McLaren has enough of a lead, 2 strong drivers, I think they got it, which would be great. I mean, remember when McLaren returned to F1, how bad they were? And they were so bad. I mean, they were like this year's Kick Sauber, but with some great drivers like Judge Button and Fernando Alonso. But that was
that McLaren Honda was notoriously unreliable. I mean, when they finished a race, it was a celebration, right? So those were tough. Those were tough years to watch that team. So it is great to see where they are now. I think it is great to see where they are now. I think they can be doing so much better given the resources that they have, the drivers that they have. I think they really shot themselves in the foot on several occasions this year, whereas Red Bull and Max kind of have it figured out already and they know how to win, how to play the game. McLaren, they've been off outside the top for a while now. And at this point, I think they have to figure out how to really play that game and how to really win. Obviously, winning the constructors title would be an impressive feat, but everyone wants that double, right? So they want to figure out how they can get one of their drivers onto the top of the driver standings. And that is no easy feat when Max is in your way, but you clearly have a faster car on most tracks in most conditions. They need to figure out how to beat Max. And, we said it a few times, but Max will not give up that track easily. So Lando or Oscar is going to have to figure out how to take it to him.
Well, and I just saw that the McLaren team principal is even saying, we're really focused on the constructors title. And that's what's, most important to us, which I think is both true and their way of saying, we don't think Lando can do it. So also, I just looked it up. According to F1 stats guy Daniel Valenti, I think that's how he says his name, Max, assuming he wins, will join Nelson Piquet as the only drivers ever to win multiple titles without driving for the Constructor Championship.
Huh.
Yep. So Nelson Piquet did it in 81 and 83. And Max will do it in 21 and 24. Although you were right about a few things recently. I was saying we do not need full-time stewards. There's been so many weird calls and some stewards making calls in race and then giving their opinions later about drivers, namely Max Verstappen. So I don't know. Maybe we do. I think you were also right about Franco Colapinto because I said there's no way Red Bull even sniffs around at him as a replacement, either for Sergio or putting Liam Lawson into Sergio's seat and then looking for somebody to pick up. Because I'm like, look, he's with Williams. He's their guy, their future. And Red Bull's not going to go after him. They're going to use somebody else. But there was already rumors this past week like, oh no, they're looking at him. So you're right there too. So the stewards and the Colapinto thing.
The stewards are like, I don't get what's happening there. It doesn't make any sense to changing them frequently or having new stewards every race weekend. But yeah, it's been pretty evident the last few races that there's some weird decisions that get made. And seems like they're a little bit wishy-washy. They change from week to week in how they handle different situations. And, this week again, at the start of the race, there was a clear infringement by several drivers taking off while the lights were red, basically, and they left the grid. And they're not supposed to do that. And the stewards went, we'll figure it out after the race. And then after the race, they were like, nah, we don't care. It's written. You're not allowed to do that. So it's weird that they just kind of let that happen. And Max was the only guy on the grid that was like, we should not go right now. We should be sitting here and not moving.
Well, my view of this has always been, look, the stewards, even though we don't have this sort of permanent group of stewards, the various stewards are overall good, overall and directionally get it right. There's so much money flowing through F1. Let's spread the money around. Let's spread the wealth around. Let's keep everybody happy. Let's go into Brazil and make as many people happy there as we can. Let's go into Las Vegas, into Baku. Let's keep former guys happy. Let's keep folks in the media happy. Let's make sure everybody's got a job. Everything's good. But yeah, I think the ongoing growth of the sport, the money entering, the corporatization of the sport, I think we are moving closer and closer to there sort of being a requirement for permanent stewards. All right, switching to the soft compound, I got this email. referenced a bunch of soon-to-premiere Max Verstappen documentaries. Anatomy of a Champion, Off the Beaten Path. I watched the trailers. They look really good. But I was like, two things. Number one, we don't want this controlled media. We want the behind the scenes. We want to see what's real. We don't want the fake. That's what made Drive to Survive so good initially. But then all the drivers, all the teams, they knew the cameras were there and they would play to it. That said, it's still our best overall look for most fans of what's going on inside, behind the scenes. And plus, I was like, Max, you SOB. All this time he's been saying, oh, I don't want to be on Drive to Survive. I don't want the cameras around. It gets in the way. He's just so focused on driving. It's like, this is BS, you mutter. He was just wanting to do his own media. I mean, I got to say, they look good, though.
Yeah, I mean, whoever is good enough to get their own documentary made about them, F them, I guess. Screw you. You suck.
It's just controlled media.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like
I don't
it's like
need to
a Beyonce
read.
documentary.
I don't need to watch your autobiography where you doctored every single thing about your life or made everything look so much better than it actually maybe was, or so much harder for you and you overcame everything. I don't give a shit. But I mean, if you're good enough, if people love you enough, then do it.
It's so fake. But then I thought, you know what? We're not going to see the real. We won't get the truth. So let's just go all in on the fake. So I'm like, what we need to do, hey, new segment. We'll still call it Soft Compound though, is our F1 movies. So we mentioned Nelson Piquet, Brazilian driver. Him and Max almost certainly will be the only drivers to have multiple championships driving for a car that did not win the championship. It just so happens that Max Verstappen is dating Nelson's daughter, Kelly Piquet. What if they have a child together? And this race was in Brazil. We think Brazil, you think Nelson Piquet, but you also think Ayrton Senna. So what we need is a Max and Kelly baby, a Terminator baby that goes back in time, but, not to do harm. It is a baby after all. well, let's not make it a baby. They have a baby. It goes back in time, but it'll be a fully grown man at that time. And he goes back to save Senna. Say, hey man, don't race. This is not your day. Call it a day, go fishing. We've already had death. Just call it a day. Don't go.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Actually, that would be good, right? Because probably be running around Italy. This is a good film set. Running around Italy, then it starts pouring rain, and you
car scene, car chase scene.
You got Senna, finally gets out of the car, and then somebody else goes off and gets smashed into, and their car explodes, and then they die instead.
or just nobody dies.
Patrick,
oh
yeah, okay, yeah. Nobody
dies. Replace somebody
Nobody
else.
dies in the Terminator. Everyone,
right.
Nobody dies.
Right. So we send the Verstappen Piquet Terminator baby. Okay, here's work with me. He goes backwards in time. He convinces Senna, although it takes, like you said, we get some Italy backdrop, we get some Monaco backdrop,
to
we
not
get some car
make
chases.
Skynet. Yeah, okay, we got it.
Right. And like, hey, Ayrton, go fishing. Trust me on this, okay? And he does. So anyway, I mean, who knows? Brad Pitt is in a movie where, Brad Pitt's like 60 and he's racing in F1. He's in that Apple movie that's supposed to come out any day now. It costs like $300 million, I've heard. $300+ million. You know what kind of car you could build for $300 million, Patrick? A winning car, I bet you.
Probably, yeah. So, yeah, that is outrageous. Must be getting inspired by Fernando Alonso, though. I mean, dude's like 41, something like that, and raced in sopping wet rain. I mean, the car's not good enough to really do too well, but I mean, he got out. I saw a video of him getting out of that car, and like the whole weekend, everyone was talking about how bad the resurfacing was on this track. It was bumpy as hell. It's just sending shock through your spine the whole race for hours. And he got out of the car and could barely stand. I'm like, damn, what a warrior. I mean, this guy is doing the same thing that these like 19 and 20-something-year-olds are struggling to do. And he's still doing it 20 years later. It is just amazing.
I mean, if I'm like Kimi Antonelli, let's say, I try to befriend this guy. I mean, the knowledge of racecraft, of living inside this bubble, he's done it for decades, of team politics, team dynamics, of issues with sponsors, engine companies. I mean, just the different engines, all the technology changes. I don't know how you do it. That's amazing. I saw this list of NBA team valuations. I don't follow basketball, but they apparently signed a massive new TV and streaming contract. And so the average NBA team value is now $4 billion. That's the average. Then I looked it up, and the average NFL team value is $6 billion. That means like cities like Green Bay, Detroit, Jacksonville, Cincinnati, cities that most of the world have never heard of, they have a football team valued in the ballpark of $6 billion.
Damn,
it's just
$6
amazing.
billion, and they can't make anything nicer than Lambeau Field.
I know. Put a roof on the damn thing. I look, and the F1 teams are about $1 billion. Mercedes and Ferrari are in the $3+ billion. So the average. But then I started thinking, and this seems like a good idea, because I know we had that discussion earlier in the year about like a sort of Saudi money leave golf type takeover of F1. There's just so much money, and they just throw so much money at it that they just take it over, or they create an alternate league. And they're buying up teams, as in probably McLaren. But I went to a baseball game, MLB, in Atlanta, and it's weird because they had a fine stadium, but for some reason they said, no, we're no longer going to use that stadium, and they built another stadium. And they built this other stadium in a place where no stadium belongs. There's no parking, no public transit. It's terrible. You're like, who was on the take to get this stadium built? But what they did is they also bought up all the land. So when you go to the baseball game, you pay them for the baseball game, all your food, drinks, you pay for the parking. Before and after the game, let's say you want to go to a bar, you want to go for a restaurant, you want to go have fun with your friends, they own all the land there. And all of those shops, bars, pubs, that's all theirs as well. And other teams are doing this now. I think Los Angeles Chargers or Los Angeles Clippers, I'm not sure. I think they're doing this model. And I was like, I wonder if F1 might start thinking about doing that, like just buying up. So Interlagos, for example, Austin, Texas, Coda, they own all of it and then all the surrounding land, and they just start developing it. I mean, that's billions and billions of dollars.
That would be nice because there's nothing around Coda. It takes an hour to get there from Austin. And it would be nice to go, walk around and, let's go have a drink and some food, and then we'll go over, watch the race. And then after the race, we'll go have a drink and some food. And yeah, that would be good.
F1 owns it all.
That would be good. I think they should do that.
Across the line, that's our segment where we predict the top 5 finishers of the next race. The next race is not until 3 weeks, but it's Las Vegas, the premier F1 event on the calendar, as we Americans say. Now, if we predict finishes in the top 5, we get 1 point. If we predict their exact right spot, that's 3 points. So if I say Max is going to finish in second, he finishes in first, I get 1 point. But if he does finish in second, I get 3 points. Works out like that. It's actually quite easy. I just don't explain it very well. So 3 weeks from now, Las Vegas. Before we choose, what are the current standings, Patrick?
Okay, well, you and I both did very poorly this week.
Not surprised.
So I was ahead by 24 whole points coming into this weekend, 76 to your 52. You gained 3 total points this week.
Ugh.
You got Max Verstappen, P1. That was the only driver you got in the top 5. I scored a grand total of 2 points this week. I had Leclerc and Russell in my top 5, but not in the positions that they finished in. So current standings after Brazil are me 78 points, you 55. So I'm up 23 on you with 3 races left. So
Oof.
I think this is kind of getting into the Max versus Lando territory. It's going to be tough for me to lose this, I guess. So we'll see. We'll see.
All right. So last year it was Max. He won. Charles and Sergio, P2 and P3. Lance Stroll, who we've been bad mouthing, though I think he did pretty well. I think it was P5. Who goes first for Las Vegas?
I have first pick for Las Vegas.
All right.
So I'm going to take Leclerc.
Ooh. All right. Well, then I'm going to swoop in. I'm going to take Max, number 1, and I am going to take Carlos Sainz, number 2.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, I think Ferrari's going to have a good week.
Carlos Sainz kind of blew it this weekend, but he's kind of hot and cold, it seems like. So, it's definitely possible he has a good weekend, especially if he doesn't run over any manhole covers. Let's see. Then I will take McLaren, I guess, Oscar Piastri.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to take the Mercedes of George Russell.
Okay, wow. George had a decent, I don't know. Though, wasn't there yet another crash? That was something we talked about. Like, will Mercedes have enough money to sort of keep upgrading? And it just sort of seemed like George finds a way of, causing them money. And that, this is the era. We need great drivers, but we need safe drivers. That spending cap gets tough. Now, it will grow. It used to be NFL spending cap was so tight. There was no money, but they just kept growing revenue, year after year. And so it just gave them, they can drop $200 million on a quarterback and $100 million on some defensive guy. Everyone's not there yet, though. So I think we still have a few more years where it's like the better driver, but he's more prone to crashing. He's on the outs. So Russell has to be careful. Anyway, so you got Charles Leclerc, Oscar, and George Russell. I've got Max, Carlos Sainz. I will then take Lando. And since I'm feeling generous, I'm going to take Sergio Perez. He did well last year. We'll see.
All right. I think I got to go with Hamilton. Under the bright lights, he's going to want to bring it. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But he's good enough. He can get up into the top 5.
He is. And I think I skipped over him. I cut out of position here as I was writing my notes. So you score with Lewis Hamilton. All right.
Let's see. Who else? I'm gonna give it to Liam Lawson. First time racing in Vegas.
Nice. Here I'm writing notes out about George crashing, Mercedes running out of money, and I think I missed my pick. But so you've got Charles, Oscar, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, and Liam Lawson. I've got Max, Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, Sergio Perez. So we had both Red Bull, and he had good Brazil. Let's see if we can continue it. Esteban Ocon.
Ooh. That would be kind of hilarious since he got fired so early on in this season. They said, we're not going to replace you, but you ain't coming back.
Right, which might be a blessing for him. Any crazy predictions, Patrick?
I have like a saga of a crazy prediction. So
okay.
I'll start with, this is all about Max Verstappen. Max is going to be given multiple time or grid penalties in each of the last 3 races. And on top of that, he will be fined for the use of bad language on the radio, even though everybody does it constantly and nobody else has been reprimanded for it except for Max. But such is the way of the winner, I guess. He will still, despite all this, win the Drivers' Championship by over 100 points. And as his final FU to Formula One, he will retire at the end of the season. That's my crazy prediction.
All right, nice. Mine is not that crazy, and I think it's much more realistic. Is Red Bull know there's no point at this anymore of keeping Sergio in? They won't win the constructors. He's faltering. It's not doing him any good. He did well in Vegas last year. I think they're going to give him one more final hurrah. They'll let him race in Vegas. They'll treat him better and give him a nicer send-off than they gave Daniel Ricciardo. But I think Vegas will be Sergio Perez's last race, and I think they will announce it before the race.
Ooh, that's interesting. You know, it's funny that like everyone was saying, Liam Lawson after Mexico, he raced Sergio too hard, so he got called into the principal's office, and Christian Horner and Helmut Marko like gave him a tongue lashing and blah blah blah. And I can almost guarantee you that did not happen. He got called in there, and they said, "Okay, Liam, we saw what you did racing Sergio. Max is in a title fight. Don't do that with him. You're fine to race Sergio. Do whatever you want." And what did we see in Brazil? Liam Lawson, Max is coming up behind me. Go through, sir. Go ahead. You're fine. Sergio comes up behind him and he races the wheels off of him, beats him. Sergio can't do anything about it. Liam Lawson is clearly driving better, at least at the moment. I think everybody on the outside thought that he was, being reprimanded. I don't think he was. I'm pretty sure they just said, don't do it with Max. Only do that with Sergio. We're fine to see you race him. We don't care about Sergio. It's whatever.
I think that could be true. I think you may have hit on something there, Patrick. All right. I want to thank you all for listening to everybody's most beloved father and son F1 podcast. It is much appreciated. And we are lights out.
See ya. Thanks for listening.
You just finished listening to Hard Compound, recorded in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and around the world.